This is the newest one.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, it's experimenting with a few different colors.
Raspberries or blackberries?
Yeah, blackberries.
Very cool. Okay. Versatile Vigilante, young Vince, Uncle Vinny, on location with a very, very special artist, Miss Katarina Holbrough.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. We're in obviously a very cool little location here. Why don't we start off with telling us a little bit about where we are, what we're doing here, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so right now we're at STACKT Market, which is on Bathurst and King. So it's a really different location where it's like storage units kind of stacked on top of each other. And it's a spot for really local businesses and like smaller community kind of gatherings. So there's a lot going on here. I won a grant with two of my other collective members and friends. So I'm in this unit for a whole month. So we came October 1st and we're here till October 31st for a gallery exhibit. So right now you're in Glimpse of Unseeing. And it's a group show of three artists, myself, Lee, and Cass. And it's all paintings mixed with this kind of lounge area where we invite people to hang out, talk, read books, just be involved with art.
I love it, man. I really enjoy the vibe in here. I wasn't too sure what to expect, and I'm like, this is super cozy, and I love it, man. Great energy in here.
Thank you. Yeah, it took a lot longer than we expected to like really get it set up, simply because we didn't know the space beforehand, but it turned out great. Yeah, we're really happy with it.
I love it. It's a very, very nice opening vibe, very welcoming vibe.
Thank
And
you.
you mentioned you had a bunch of people in here for Nuit Blanche. How was that?
Nuit Blanche was insane. We were expecting a lot of people. Like beforehand, STACKT Market, they emailed all the businesses and said, hey, we're looking at probably 50,000 people coming through over the 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. time period. And honestly, I would believe it, that there was that many people. It was just
50,000?
constantly in and out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How exhausted were you after that?
I was sick.
Even
I
better.
didn't stay the entire night. I stayed till I believe like 11. And then Cass and Lee stayed till 2 a.m. And yeah, they're the champs.
Yes. Shout out to the team. Nuit Blanche is always interesting because I'm like, man, it seems so cool to stay out till 7 a.m., but I don't know if I could do it anymore, man.
I don't think I've ever actually done a
long
full
night.
Nuit Blanche.
No.
No.
But I love the spirit of it. Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nuit Blanche. Amazing, man. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Since it is our first time meeting, I would love to learn a little more about your background. So how did you even become an artist in the first place?
Yeah, it's a bit different than I would say a lot of like more traditional artists. I really started painting and like dedicating to the arts when I went to university. Which is strange because I went to OCAD, which is an art school.
Shout out OCAD.
I went not really knowing what I wanted to do, and I kind of found it at OCAD. I knew I wanted to be creative in some ways. I originally applied to OCAD as graphic design, which I'm glad I didn't do that. But I started at OCAD as like a general admission, and then you kind of like specialize after that and really like hone yourself down. I've always been a creative in ways, just I never found painting until like being immersed in it and being with other artists. But I studied actually criticism and curatorial practice at OCAD, minoring in drawing and painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. That's an interesting path because usually I hear like art students will say, yeah, like I've been painting or
know,
doing art
right?
forever and then I wanted to get into it. Was there something where you were like, I don't want to follow a traditional path. I want to follow that art path?
There was a little bit. I actually went to Laurier for like 1 semester business.
Okay.
Because that's where I went to high school in Kitchener, and it just wasn't for me. Like I'm fine in academic settings, but that kind of environment wasn't my vibe. It really was quite soul-sucking. And I wanted something that I knew I could thrive in and that I would feel like actually meant something to me rather than just like helping corporations up the
Right.
ladder, right? So I fell on to art in some ways. And I went to Humber first for Art Foundation, simply because I wanted to move to Toronto, and that's the only thing that kind of was like the gateway to doing it. And that's a 1 year certificate course. It's literally just to like test everything out and see what you like. And then from there, you go on to different things. So from there, I went on to OCAD.
I like that a lot. I like how you kind of knew from an early point, like, okay, it's not really what I want to do. I like how you even said, let's try this. It's like
Yeah.
you sometimes you do have to jump in, but sometimes you can take a little bit of a taste. Like, let's see if I like it.
Yeah,
I like that
exactly.
strategy.
And I do find I tend to kind of run it things with full force. So having that kind of like that time to really think about what I wanted to do and move past that, it's something that is really uncommon for me actually, but I think it really worked.
Good for you.
Yeah.
How was the adjustment coming to Toronto full time?
I loved it. I really didn't like Kitchener. I didn't grow up in Kitchener, but I went to like high school in Kitchener, and I don't know. It's very small. It's a lot of driving. There's not a lot of things to like walk to, and yeah, Toronto's just there's a lot happening. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of community, and there's something for everyone, which I love.
You're absolutely right. I feel like Toronto's such an interesting place because we hate on the city, but
Yeah.
we also have to realize it's one of the biggest and best cities in the world, at least North America for sure. Like the options we have, the creativity that exists,
Yeah.
especially coming from a smaller town. It's like, man, not every city has anywhere close to this.
No. See, I actually grew up outside of Fredericton in New Brunswick.
Okay,
Like that's
out
where I went to
east.
elementary school. And I went to the oldest and smallest operating elementary school in Canada. So I went from like small town to Kitchener to Toronto. So like stepping stones, right?
I'm seeing a theme here. I like the stepping stones. That's very
Yeah.
cool. How was growing up out east? I've never been to that part of Canada, but
Oh,
it
it's
looks
beautiful. It's definitely a different experience. Um, there's when I went to elementary school and then we moved back to Ontario, because this is technically where I'm from, um, they wanted to hold me back because the schooling system in out east is viewed as like uncomparable to Ontario's schooling
okay.
system. So there is a lot of like province kind of like just stereotypes and stuff like that that come along with it. But New Brunswick, it's a completely different playing field. Like the nature there is insane. I grew up on like acres of like trees and stuff, like with all our neighbors' properties, and it was just uncomparable. Yeah.
I love that. It's interesting that you've had different perspectives too. You've seen different things. I think that's a good thing, especially for being an artist.
Yeah. I will say New Brunswick is very white.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's those kind of like being immersed in like a white community and like with few different kind of cultures that kind of influence it, and then going to Kitchener, which is very diverse, and then Toronto, which is like a completely different level,
Yeah, the
right?
most diverse.
Yeah.
Interesting. You've seen different, you've had stages already.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. So when you went to OCAD, is that when you started diving deeper into like creating your own stuff?
Yeah, so that's when I really started figuring out that painting is what I wanted to do. Um, I always was like doing things with my hands ever since I was a kid. Like I had a little craft box that I would just make things all the time. But it never really clicked for me drawing and painting. I actually can't draw. Like I'm terrible at drawing, but painting is just like the shapes and colors is completely different for me. It just makes sense. And I think I never really got that experience where I could play with it before I went to OCAD. So being in those classes and being with all the other artists, it's really inspiring. And it just makes you want to like learn how to do it.
Right. Building a network.
Yeah.
And I feel like even with, I was talking to an artist about this where art is not competitive, but I feel like when you're around other great artists, it does give you a little bit of a kick, right?
Yeah. It really does. And it sparks different ideas
Yeah.
too, because you get different perspectives, right?
100%. When you were developing that network, is that when you started about thinking, let me throw a gallery, let me throw some shows? When did
Mm,
that kind of start?
when did that start? That's a good question.
Because that is how I should give some background. That's
Yeah.
really how I heard of you. Like all these cool art shows in the city. Shout out Hayley, Axelrad.
Yeah.
Big shout out Jill Simmons. We'll talk more about both of them. But I kept
Yeah.
seeing your name like in these shows, in these things. So that's where I know you from. How did you
Yeah.
kind of get into that in the first place?
Yeah, definitely. It's obviously I went to school for curation, right? So I always knew I wanted to do something with other artists. And for me, curation is like, I've heard this actually, I think Wanda Nanabush, she came into one of my curation classes and she gave a speech. And she talked about curation as a mediator between the art and the audience. And that really resonated with me, just having that kind of middle ground where you're helping the artist communicate to the other people that don't usually get art or aren't really like in tuned with all the history or context behind it. So for me, once I heard that, I think it was in like my third year, I'm like, okay, this is what I want. This is the median that I want to continue with, and this is how I feel like I can give back to the community, like the art community specifically. And I graduated from OCAD last year, and that's when I really started thinking about like, okay, now what? And one of my good friends, Sar Wegman, they were like, hey, we're all artists. Let's just put on a show. So we did. I curated the show with them and I found She Said just from looking up online. I'm like, okay, where's an art gallery? Like, where can I look that's accessible and that will allow us to have that freedom to bring in all our own artists and bring in context and really have control over it. And She Said was just that space.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
like defines that
Yeah.
100%. That's such an important part of the city. I've talked about it a bunch, but I feel like have to keep talking about it because
Yeah.
it's very rare. Art galleries are not cheap to rent
Oh,
out,
no, not at
and
all.
they're pretty restrictive too in what you can do. And with She Said being so affordable, and also like you said, there's you can do what you want to do in there. It's so important for the city.
Yeah, there's really no other space like it.
No.
And Toronto is very hard to access in ways where like rent is so expensive. People are obviously wary because, there's so many people that want to take advantage of things. So having that kind of space where you can experiment, it's just, yeah, you can't find it.
You're absolutely right, and that's what art is. To me, it's all about experimenting, all
Yeah,
about trying new stuff. Like
that's how you grow.
that's how you grow.
Yeah.
I love that. So when was that show? Sorry.
That was, it took us a while to get like fully set up. I think we were planning it for a year, and that was June of 2024.
This past June.
Yeah, it
Wet,
was
wet.
called Wet
I saw
Ontology.
that. I didn't
Yeah,
realize that was your first show.
that was, it wasn't my first, it was the first curated
First
show,
curated show.
like with a group. My first show with She Said was actually, I think, with Hayley Axelrad.
No way.
Yeah.
And that was December.
Yeah, December 2023.
Fun fact, that was the day after mine.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah.
that's why I missed it.
Gang shit. How was that experience?
It was amazing. Honestly, planning it with Hayley, like, she's on top of everything. You don't get that a lot with artists, but yeah, she's just like on the ball, right? So it was
Yeah.
easy.
Those guys, like Haley and Jill are really sick examples of being super cool, super like creative, but also extremely smart. Like
Yeah.
they see a couple steps ahead.
Yeah, emotionally smart too. I
Yeah.
think that's the important part there.
100%. So when you were starting to link up with artists, have you had other artists reach out to you and be like, Katarina,
Yeah,
help me
I
out?
have
Yeah?
actually. Yeah. I've had a few people actually fairly recently reach out to me asking for my own work to be in their shows or like to review their curation statements, stuff like that. It's it's a kind of weird experience just because I'm not used to being in that kind of position, but I love helping people out. So it's yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Good for you. You see it as something you want to keep doing.
Yeah, of course.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about trying something. You never know where it
I
might take you.
know.
It's impossible to know but if you don't try, you won't get there.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset where you try everything once, and if it doesn't work out, you can move on.
You're absolutely right. At the worst case scenario, usually you have a funny story or
Yeah, it's
something like,
true.
oh, I got embarrassed. Big deal.
Yeah,
Who cares?
yeah,
Love that. So you do your own work as
I
well.
do. Yes.
We're gonna take some photos actually later. We definitely
Mm,
gotta show off the gallery. You have a green theme
I
in a lot your work.
do.
We joked about it before, how you've been asked this.
It is the first question, but I get it. It's very overpowering. So it's like the first thing you see.
I love it, by the way. I'm just
Oh, thank
curious
you.
how like kind of that developed for you.
Yeah, it's how it developed was, I guess, I just started using, it's a very specific green, phthalo green. I started using it in my palettes and then it slowly took over. I don't know how it happened, but it just slowly, gradually became the entire canvas. And I'm like, oh, I like this. It looks good. And it draws me to it. So I think specifically with phthalo green, what it is that really draws me to it is the kind of like a natural tint that it has. It's very blue and very like cool toned,
Yeah,
right? And using that for the more organic shapes and like plants in my paintings, because they are very botanical and natural, right? Using that kind of unnatural color for something so natural, it's like a playful kind of twist to it that I really like.
I like that, and I feel like it's automatic like standout. Like it's a color
Yeah,
you don't see a lot.
it's
Plus,
true.
you're developing your style, and if you know your work, you see it. You're like, oh, I know who that belongs to.
Yeah, it's true.
I like
Yeah.
that.
And I also really like it's very bright, like you said, it stands out. And since my paintings are so dark, like the backgrounds are very black and deep, most of the time at least, it kind of makes it feel like it's illuminating everything, right? And it's like actually popping out of the canvas. It feels more like engaging that way.
I like that a lot. Is that
Hmm.
something you see continuing on the green path, or is there a day where you're like, you know what, no more green?
I'm not opposed to stopping with green, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
Love that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna add more colors in, but green is still gonna be like the focus, right?
Very cool. Another thing I want to ask you. So we got the CLK
Yes.
very present in our frame here.
Yeah.
That's what you got going on here. Talk a little bit about CLK, how that
Yeah.
started and what that's all about.
So CLK actually started with this whole gallery space. It was with two of my friends, Cass and Lee. We
Hence the CLK. There we
exactly,
go.
yeah. um, we wanted to do a show together for like a year or two now, and we had a theme, we had ideas, our paintings, and everything. We just didn't have the space, right? So we were like, okay, let's apply to this grant because we saw a Stack Market grant on Instagram, which they have every month. So if anyone's watching, definitely apply.
Very
Um,
cool.
and they accept small businesses. So what we had to do is create a collective as a nonprofit. So it's three members that are Cass, Lee, and I. And we had to create a collective that focuses on exhibiting art in unconventional spaces. That's how we applied. That's what we want to do with the collective. And we see this as our inaugural step into that. And we're hoping to do more probably in 2025. But that's how this all started, is really just wanting to show our work and be together in like a community space.
That's excellent. In that one statement, I learned so much. First of all the cool grants that are
Yeah.
available. I really like that you guys took the initiative of like, no, this fits with what we're doing. Let's go
We
for
made it
it.
fit.
You made it fit. That's really, really cool. Is the business side of art something you enjoy getting involved in as well?
I'm quite experienced in it. Like I'm a studio manager for an artist. I work in galleries, so like I know the business side. I wouldn't say I necessarily enjoy all aspects of it. Like I don't enjoy accounting. It's
Okay.
quite boring, but it's necessary. Like you need to be on top of that stuff as an artist. But it is a lot of work that people just don't think about. Um, but it's important to know, even as a individual artist or someone who wants to curate, you still need to do all your own taxes. You have to deal with all the fees, budgeting, like to apply for grants, you need to make this extensive budget that's explaining every single step, how you're getting funding, how you're spending that funding. It's a lot that you need to know. So I think it is very important to know, but it's not for everyone.
You know what? It's one of those things where if you don't know about it, you don't know about it. Once you do, you're like, well, it's a full-time thing on its own if you want it
It's
to be.
yeah, it's very time consuming, which is why a lot of artists hire someone to take care of it because artists aren't always cut out for that kind of engaging, like number based or even just like social, like interactions that come with
Sure.
it, right?
Just all about the painting and the art.
Yeah, I wish it was all about that.
That's something though I like about you and Haley too. I noticed this where it's like, no, it's a full cycle.
It
Like
is,
if
yeah.
you're, and especially if you want to be in charge of yourself,
Yeah,
responsible for yourself,
yeah,
like you don't want someone speaking for you, or you got to be on top of this shit.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely important, and um, I actually, while I don't like the numbers or anything like that, I find it really inspiring to be able to kind of make something from nothing. So, like you said, being in control of your own kind of business, it's you really are an entrepreneur as an artist. Like, there's no question about that. And it's, yeah, there's a lot of advantages to that and a lot of challenges as well.
You're absolutely right. And it's a tricky thing because I don't know. I'm sure you have those days where it's like, fuck, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But then you're like, I can't go back to not doing this. Like,
No,
it's like
there's
you're
no
kind of
way.
hooked.
Yeah. Yeah, before I was like in gallery, like working at a gallery, I was an administrator for like some smaller business and it's yeah, I don't know if I could do that full time.
It's tough. Like, there's a steadiness to it that's nice. And obviously,
Yeah.
like, that's important in life, but you're not the boss.
No.
And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, in charge of other people or power hungry. I mean like just you do what you think is
Yeah.
right, and that's a luxury, man.
It is, but a lot of people find that intimidating.
Yes, it's
A
not for
lot,
everyone. You're right.
yeah, yeah,
I like that, and I think that's something that helps too when you realize, oh, not everyone likes to do it, and I
yeah.
actually like it or I'm good at it. It's a lane.
It's true. Yeah. And being able to engage with the people who aren't good at that and like acknowledging those kind of differences, I think is important too. Yeah.
It's what makes the world go around. Like everyone has different skills, everyone
Yeah,
has
definitely.
different, it's important to, and that curation comes so much in handy because you're bringing those people together.
Yeah.
Love that. I also like what you said about you like seeing like turning nothing into something. I
Mm,
feel like that gets addictive too in its own.
yeah, it really does. I would say a large portion of like what keeps me going is just like constantly being busy and constantly like figuring out the next step and just putting it all together, right?
100%. So being involved in the Toronto art scene as
Yeah.
you are in terms of your own stuff and also being in the gallery scenes, do you enjoy the Toronto art world? Is it something that, you know,
Yeah, I would say I do. Um, it needs growing. And I think that's really what I want to be a part of is helping it grow in different ways. Right now, it's very, like a large portion of it is commercial scenes, which it's needed. Like artists need money, the art needs something, right? But there's not a lot of space for growth in it where you're starting out and where emerging or mid-career artists really can like make a stance, right?
right?
A lot of the time artists are expected kind of to develop your like CV outside of Canada. And once you do, that's when you can get into the galleries here in Toronto. So a lot of the commercial galleries are like that. They're like, if you haven't shown in the States, we don't even talk to you, which I don't think is right. And I feel like there's so much talent here in Toronto that just doesn't get seen. Um, and I don't really see why. Like there is money for the arts. It's even if it's not like collectors who are buying it, it could be grants or just the community actual like involvement with the arts, I think really would help push it forward.
I like that a lot, and I agree with you. I was curious. I didn't realize what it was like where you have to go to the States or somewhere else. Like, what do you think
Yeah.
that's all about?
I would say that's primarily for like more the large galleries or like the more established
Okay.
galleries. Like definitely if you go to Yorkville, your art's in there, you're in the States. Like there's no exception. There are some smaller galleries that there are some exceptions. One that just opened up is Gallery, I think it's 1818 or Gallery 1888 down on Dundas West. And it is a commercial gallery, but they have a emerging artist there, Ethan Platts, who's like amazing. And he's Toronto based. He just graduated OCAD. And they're not afraid to like have that emerging and like that risk that's involved with
Right.
it. But you don't see that often, right? And I don't know if that's just because it's such a risk to start a gallery that is involved in that kind of scene, or if they just don't think the market's there. I'm not really sure, but it's present.
Interesting. I feel like it's probably a bit of everything.
Yeah,
I also do think that this happens in every scene where this is what I'm supposed to do, so I'm
yeah,
gonna do it, like kind of monkey see, monkey do type stuff. And that's where the people that are not afraid to stand out and be the first over the mountain
yeah.
so important.
It's true. And there definitely are more accessible galleries here in Toronto. It's just far in between, right?
Right. And I think growth is the best way to put it. Like that
Yeah.
takes time, and I think we'll get there.
Yeah, it's true.
People like yourself doing these
Mm.
cool things. Hey, this
Thank
is a
you.
great thing.
Yeah.
Shout out to you, man. With what you're doing now, like in terms of stacked, in terms of the curation,
Hmm.
is that the lane you see yourself continuing down?
Honestly, I've been so focused on this exhibit. I'm like blinded almost to everything else, but I do think I really want to continue with like CLK specifically and just like embodying that idea of having exhibits in unconventional spaces. But I also want to pursue my own art. So I want to be able to do both, but that's very challenging.
I really like the answer to that question because you're basically like, I'm just staying present and
Yeah.
what I'm doing now. And I'm like, that's a huge thing that you have to be.
Yeah.
Like, you can't be too, I think that happens where we get too caught up in what's next, what's next, what's
Yeah, it's
next.
true.
Man, what's in front of you right now, that's all you need to worry about, focus on.
Yeah.
That was a good answer.
Thank you.
Very good answer. Is that something you work on in terms of the staying in the moment, staying present?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said before, it's kind of an issue where I kind of like go full force
Right.
and I kind of get ahead of myself a lot of the time. And it's something I'm trying to work on where I can kind of pull myself back a little bit and not only like in my business or like curation, but also in my social life and like my relationships. Just having that space in between the two and be able to like stand back and be like, hey, I need to make space for art, relationships, community, right? And you can only do that if you're present in the moment and not thinking about what's next.
You're absolutely right. You're speaking my language because it's in 2024. It's very tricky to be present. There's so much going on all the time,
Yeah.
and it's like, no, man. Sometimes the simple approach is the better approach, and I like how you phrase that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely. You want to talk a little bit about your specific theme here? I know you mentioned it earlier in the interview. Remind the
Yeah,
audience
what's
of
the
what it's
title?
called.
It's called Glimpse of Unseeing.
Glimpse of Unseeing.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So the whole exhibit started with us looking at the gaze, just like how we look at paintings and what paintings say. And each of us kind of took that differently, but we all found like a common thread between them. So we all started looking at ideas of kind of ignorance in a way and how we kind of go through the world without really seeing things and just like being on our straight path. For myself, I was looking at a lot of like environmental issues, my own relationship with femininity, and just being in Toronto in such like an urban environment. I was looking at what's omitted. So for my work is I'm doing like large shapes and cutting them out of the background and leaving a lot of transparency and kind of like build up. So I'm choosing what to omit and choosing what to include, but I'm also having that kind of confrontation with specifically my eyepiece. It's bringing in the viewer and confronting you with your own kind of ignorance in a way. Cass was looking at stereotypes because she is an Asian Canadian. She grew up in Mississauga, and she was looking at her experiences as an Asian woman growing up and those stereotypes that come along with it that are often not talked about. So I think the first one she started with was the painting there called Fox Face, where it's someone pulling up their eyes with like a focus right there, and it's talking about that trend a little while ago on Instagram where specifically like white influencers would pull their eyes back. And it became chic. It became like the cool thing to do, right?
No way. I think I missed that.
Yeah.
It's too many weird trends,
I
man.
know, I know. So she was really looking at that, how she used to get made fun of for like those traits, and now
Right.
it's like trending, it's cool, right? And then Lee was looking at the mundane and how we often aren't just like present, and he was adding this kind of whimsical twist to it with the googly eyes, which you can see throughout the exhibit here.
Nice. There we go.
Yeah.
That's very cool, man. I like how you all had your have your own different style and
Yeah,
inspirations, but there's like a common.
exactly.
Very cool. Glimpse of Unseeing, and you said that's till all of October, through all
Yeah,
of
till
October.
October 31st.
Halloween.
Yes.
Love that,
Come
man.
out for Halloween, come dressed up.
Yes, come have a costume party at
Yeah, it's stacked.
STACKT at CLK. That's very, very cool. Do you guys ever bounce ideas off each other?
Yeah, I definitely say we do. I don't know about them as much. Cass is actually a tattoo artist as well, so her
Okay.
primary thing is tattooing. And she paints just for fun for a lot of the time. Whereas Lee is a realist painter, so he went to the Realist Academy. I know you were there with Hayley.
Yes.
Yeah, so he still studies there, and he does drawing and painting, like realistic drawing and painting. And obviously, my work isn't that. So I've always like bouncing some ideas off him, like composition or just like little techniques. I don't even know if he realizes it, but he helps me a lot with these like little technical things
Okay.
that you just don't really learn about outside of like those really like academic settings,
Right.
right? And whether it's just like sharing a photo and being like, hey, should I add this? Or like talking about different oil painting techniques. Yeah, there's a lot to it there.
That's excellent. You guys have a good team. And I feel like a good team has people with different,
Yes,
if
yeah,
you're all the same, it's cool, but it's,
yeah.
you're all seeing similar things when you have different perspectives. I
Yeah,
love
it's
that.
true. Yeah, it's very true.
Very cool, man. Very cool. I really like what you guys are doing. This
Thank
is
you.
really interesting. I love your entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah, I think you're doing really, really good things in the city. Anytime your name's involved, it's some cool shit. So keep
I'm
that up,
honestly
man.
surprised to hear that you hear my name. I don't know. I feel like I'm so like insular that I don't really think about that.
I feel you on that, man. I think a lot of people probably feel similarly,
Yeah, I'm
but kind of
sure.
like we talked about before the interview, the world is small,
Yes,
and
yeah.
especially in Toronto. And one thing with you and with other like cool people, when you start seeing someone's name often and in cool stuff and you're
Mm-hmm.
with different people, I think that's a sign of like, oh, you're cool yourself.
Oh,
Like you very rarely hear about someone at cool things with cool people if they're an asshole.
yeah, I guess that's
You know what
true.
I
That
mean?
is
So it's
true.
like real recognize real, as corny as that saying is, but
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah,
So
I
keep
can
that up, man.
acknowledge that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Are there some things for year end that you got planned, or just we're present, we're focused on?
We're present here. We have our closing reception October 25th.
Okay, I'll be
Just
there.
with Nuit Blanche and everything, we didn't want to do an opening. So we're doing this instead. And yeah, we're going to invite a bunch of people. It's going to be fun. After
Excellent.
that, everything's in the new year.
That's good too. I feel like sometimes taking that year end to chill a
Yeah.
bit, maybe regroup. It's a
I
good
say that
thing.
now though. I'm a very last minute person. So like a week from now I can have something. Who knows?
Spontaneity, man.
Yeah.
Artists, that goes hand in hand.
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. Are there other, ask Haley this similar question. Are there other like styles of art, like movies, television, books that you get inspiration from?
All my paintings actually start from research.
Okay.
So I do a lot of reading on just like subjects that I find interesting, whether it be like academic reading, like essays or like textbooks or anything like that, or just literally like a fiction or fantasy book. I don't really like differentiate them that way, but I start with reading and then I kind of grow from there.
Very
And
cool.
I would also say some film does inspire me, like with composition. I sometimes catch myself being like, oh, this scene, and like talking in kind of like a film kind of way, which is interesting because I'm not at all a
Okay.
videographer or like a film buff, but there's an art to it. And yeah, I definitely am inspired by that.
Very cool. I like asking artists that question because it's always a different answer,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's always cool. And actually, when you mentioned like seeing the green, seeing your vibe there, it definitely
Hmm.
gave me like a fantasy novel
Yeah, right.
feel. Yeah. So
Yeah, I
very
always
cool.
say it's like how I describe my work is it's very liminal. Like it's not grounded in one space. It's very like, I don't know, you can be anywhere and you can just kind of like jump into it, right?
I like that quote a lot. That could be applied for a lot of aspects
Yeah.
of life.
Yeah, it's true.
Very cool. Katarina, I really appreciate your time. Is
Yeah,
there
of course.
anything you want to promote, plug, share with the audience? Floor is yours.
I mean, obviously, if you're around, come out October 25th. Come see Stacked until the 31st. Other than that, I guess just follow me on Instagram. That's my main mode of everything communication, talking with people, sharing my art. It's all on Instagram, which is katarina.holbrough.
Follow Katarina, man. We'll put that on the screen. Make sure you guys follow that. CLK has an Instagram as well.
Yes, clk.to. It just started, so we're still building it up. But yeah,
Growth, one step at a time.
yeah.
Awesome, man. Katarina, I really appreciate
Yeah, you
you.
too. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Shout out to She Said Gallery, Jill.
Mm,
Shout out to Hayley. Shout out every Toronto artist doing their thing.
yeah.
We're out here. Shout out to CLK.